I often like to think back to the days when reading was for dorks and video games were for the cool hip crowd like us. Good times. Nowadays, of course, there's more to games than just blowing off people's heads and racing the fastest cars. There are actual impressive stories to experience as well. That being said, sometimes the lore, audio logs, and environmental storytelling can really only go so far in bringing those tales to life. And while some video games actively rely on the ambiguity of the narrative, perhaps some others could benefit from being explored in greater detail, perhaps in a bound collection of pages that you can read at your leisure between owning the noobs, perhaps in a book. Granted, there have been a few very successful novelizations and other text-based spin-offs of video games already, including World of Warcraft, Assassin's Creed, Diablo, and let's not forget, Minecraft. Today though, we'll celebrate those games that have yet to receive official fiction of their own, be they novels, graphic novels, short story collections, or anything else along those lines. So, grab your reading glasses and switch on your book lights, because I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 video games that would make great books. Number 10. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. There's a rule in writing that says your story should cover the most interesting part of a character's life. If things don't get interesting until later, start the story later. If the most interesting thing already happened, tell that story instead. And it's safe to say that each game in the Legend of Zelda series indeed covers the most interesting events for that particular incarnation of Link. And yet, there's still a very interesting story to be told about the Wind Waker. It just focuses on a different character. This incarnation of Zelda doesn't know she's Zelda. Under the name Tetra, the once and future princess sails the Great Sea with her band of mighty pirates, terrorizing everyone she meets. Well, Nintendo's family-friendly definition of terrorizing, that is, which probably boils down to making rude faces and engaging in particularly aggressive games of patty-cake. The point is that we meet Tetra shortly before she learns the truth of who she is, leaving most of her previous life unexplored. A story of her adventures on the high seas would be a lot of fun, and we could explore her relationship with her mother too, who used to lead the crew until her untimely death. The Wind Waker was great, but Nintendo clearly left the most interesting part of Tetra's life untold, and we would love to hear about it. Number 9. Deadly Premonition. Not to harp on about the same point too much longer, but Deadly Premonition has a pretty unique answer for the most interesting part of a character's life prerequisite. Francis York Morgan himself. The guy is so bizarre, his thought process is so unique, and his demeanour so indefinable that every part of his life must be the most interesting part. We've had 2 games so far, each of which follows York as he investigates a case on behalf of the FBI, and each time he meets a cast of strange individuals, untangles a mystery full of impossible twists, and is both helped and hindered by supernatural forces beyond his understanding. A fertile formula for sure, and Deadly Premonition's appeal lies in areas that would translate well: quirky dialogue, surreal settings, and a narrative that would probably unfold much better without any clunky skateboarding sections. Agent York has had a long career with the FBI, so surely there are a few case files that could be unsealed for the purposes of a tie-in novel or two. You could even include some delicious recipes as a bonus. Isn't that right, Zach? Number 8. Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption was a near-perfect game. It was so near-perfect that news of a sequel filled many fans with apprehension. Surely we had already experienced the entire story of John Marston. Rockstar's approach, however, turned out to be a good one. Focus on a completely different character who ran with the same band of outlaws. Arthur Morgan was instead the backbone of Red Dead Redemption 2, and now that we've also experienced his story, perhaps we could ride along with other members of the Vanderling gang in a novel. After all, wouldn't it be nice to experience more time with, say, Micah? No, I suppose not. Strauss, maybe? Again, no. Who'd have thought a band of murderous outlaws would make for such unpleasant company? Anyway, the Wild West is full of story possibilities. By focusing on some of the supporting characters from the two games, we could learn a lot more about them, and a talented author could even give each of them a different redemption of their own. After all, there must be a reason that these characters came together in the first place. Nobody just wakes up in the morning and decides they're going to join a band of highwaymen. I mean, admittedly, I did this morning, but I'm an exception. Now, if we could hurry this video along, I've got several people to rob at gunpoint before lunchtime. Number 7. The Yorg. An award-winning indie game, The Yorg allows 1 to 4 players to take control of the inhabitants of a city 6 weeks before the coming of the mysterious but deadly Yorg. Every action influences both your character and the city as a whole, allowing you to build up skills from scientific investigation, hunting, building, social climbing, or just getting plastered at the bar. The narrative potential of this story is enormous, with all of the characters being blank slates to begin with. And while explaining the true nature of the Yorg would obviously spoil the mystery and dread of the game and should therefore be avoided at all costs, expanding upon it in certain limited ways could help create some utterly Lovecraftian levels of horror. Where is the city? Who are its inhabitants? The Yorg came before, but will it come again? It would make for an outstanding choose-your-own-adventure novel, and as long as you didn't read the thing out loud, you wouldn't even have to worry about mispronouncing the word Yorg. Number 6. What Remains of Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch is already practically a visual novel in its own right, but we think the tragic story of the Finch family would work just as well in text form. The entire narrative follows the sadness of the Finch legacy, and the game is already told through short stories, so an actual novel would work perfectly. Of course, it would also have to find alternative ways of presenting the stories with the same amount of intrigue and charm. And while it wouldn't necessarily be equal when it comes to the impact of some of the in-game visuals, like the fish chopping sequence, it would make for an interesting companion text. Perhaps it would simply be Edith's diary or letter, which provides the narration for the game. Maybe even with additional footnotes, diagrams, and tidbits unique to the book. Or maybe we could hear from another member of the Finch family entirely. Either way, we think it would be wonderful and depressing. Mainly depressing. Number 5. Portal. By its nature, Portal is a puzzle game with lore slotted in around it, and even then, some of it could be easily missed if you don't actively search for it. So what could be better than a full novelization following the story of Chell, GLaDOS, and the Aperture Science facility? What's most fascinating about the story of Portal is the events that unfolded so many years ago, including Cave Johnson's final days, the creation of GLaDOS, and the state of the world outside the facility. I won't go into the full details, but it's equal parts intriguing and just messed up, you guys. The comic Lab Rat went into some detail about Doug Ratman's survival of GLaDOS' slaughter, his falling in love with the companion cube, and him being the reason that Chell is the next subject to be tested, but we want more! And of course, with Valve confirming that the events of the first Portal game took place around the same time as Half-Life, this only increases the possibility of an epic crossover between the mute protagonists of Chell and Gordon Freeman. She's got the leg braces, he's got the crowbar, and together they, bring the thunder. Yeah. Number 4. Soma. There are 2 ways to talk about Soma. The first is the easy way. The second is the extraordinarily difficult, trying desperately in vain to avoid spoilers way. So, if you plan on playing Soma, which you should, just take it from me, it would make a great novel, and skip ahead to the timestamp on screen if you want to avoid spoilers. Right, the rest of you. Soma is a work of profoundly effective psychological horror. There are angry monsters who want to eat you in the game, yes, but those are not the things that will haunt you long after you've reached the ending. It's a game that raises uncomfortable questions about what it means to exist. The nature of consciousness, of identity, of individuality are all explored in a game that is ostensibly about being trapped with creepy beasties at the bottom of the sea. The world of Soma, therefore, is perfect for an introspective medium such as a novel. A dark, terrified, stream of consciousness narrative could stem as easily from protagonist Simon as it could from one of the many robots that believe themselves to be human, which actually, let me stop myself there because I'm sure nobody heeded my spoiler warning. Just play Soma, okay? And when you're thoroughly overwhelmed by the fragile truth of your own existence, you can feel sad with me that nobody's turned it into an even more existentially distressing novel. Number 3. Night in the Woods. Who doesn't love a mysterious personal narrative about mental health, growing up, small-town life, and the rising dread of a monster living in the abandoned mine shafts beneath the town? I ask myself that question every day. Night in the Woods is heavily story-based, following university dropout May Borowski as she moves back to her small town, mainly addressing the feelings of growing up and things having to move on from what they were. However, it takes one hell of a left turn towards the end, with May's mysterious dreams throughout the game apparently resulting from a connection to the Black Goat, an unseen creature that lives inside a bottomless pit deep within the mines, who is worshipped by a murderous cult made up of several residents of the town. As some of the more bizarre parts of the narrative, both the cult and Black Goat go massively unaddressed, and if anything in this game were to be explored in a book, then it would definitely be the formation of the cult. Does the Black Goat actually exist? How and why did it mentally connect with May? Who is the janitor, and why does he seem to know so much more about the characters than they do him? We demand answers, hypothetical author of an eventual novelization of Night in the Woods. Number 2. Fallout. The fact that there hasn't been a proper Fallout novel outside of fanfiction is both amazing and a travesty. Aside from comics like One Man and a Crate of Puppets, the only true books available for Fallout are the strategy guides, and it's not so much the game's plots that need to be explored, but rather the universe itself. The cause of the nuclear holocaust is obvious, being that the United States and China nuked the hell out of the entire planet with expected results. But that isn't really the interesting bit. There are infinite prospects for a story set in the immediate aftermath of the war, and they can be told in ways deeper and more complex than what players find in old terminal entries in the games. But if you aren't necessarily wanting a The Road style apocalypse story about the trauma of an entire planet going bye-bye, then there are the NPC stories to explore. How about a crime series following Nick Valentine, pre- and post-war, solving mysteries with the sole survivor? Or maybe the Brotherhood of Steel's origins in the days following the bombs being dropped, trekking across the ruined wasteland of California and attempting to rebuild society from the military up. Those could be great. And you know what the best part is? With a novel, you won't have to worry about glitching through the map. And number 1, Crash Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot is the science fantasy farce we never knew we needed. Following Crash's creation in Cortex's lab, his subsequent escape, and his quest to rescue his girlfriend Torna from Cortex and the mutated animals he once knew as friends. While it might all be fun and zany games, complex themes and funny antics don't have to be mutually exclusive. This is, after all, a tale of a human wrecking his way through the animal population of an Australian archipelago in the name of scientific advancements. Ripperoo was apparently the first test subject, and while he's obviously off his rocker, he is shown to be brilliant. A little unstable, yes, but to be honest, I would be too if someone had decided to shoot me with a dangerous and untested Evolvo ray. Luckily, he did manage to get his university degree, and I'm proud of him. Cortex's other henchmen are equally troubled, with he himself telling Crash to please be more reasonable with my minions next time. Also, Tiny Tiger is apparently the only surviving thylacine, aka Tasmanian tiger, in the world, which is tragic all in itself. Just imagine giving more characterization to these supposed antagonists. Who is fake Crash, and why does he want to be the real Crash so badly? Is Tiny Tiger searching for more of his extinct brethren? Are these animals actually loyal to Cortex, or do they want to be free like Crash? Move over, plague dogs. It's time to make room for some naughty dogs.